Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's event, Data Centers as Engines of Europe's Digital Future. Can they power a sustainable energy transition? My name is Dave Keating. I'm a journalist based here in Brussels. I'm going to be guiding us through this morning's very timely, very pertinent discussion about what data centers can bring to the table and what challenges that they have for our energy systems. As Europe strives to position itself at the forefront of the global digital economy, we know that data centers are emerging as the backbone of this economy. They enable digitalisation, but they also foster artificial intelligence, cloud services, and the broader digital transition. But they also present several challenges, most notably the intense energy that they demand. If that demand is to be met while also sticking to the EU's climate goals, we're going to need a big scale-up of renewables with perhaps some installations dedicated to powering specific data centers. This is actually something they've also been talking about in the United States, about having these power units dedicated to data centers, although in the US, they're talking about fossil fuel power units. Here, we're talking more about renewable units. In the next months, the European Commission is expected to publish its strategic roadmap for digitalization and artificial intelligence in the energy sector. That will aim at accelerating the deployment of digital tools across key decarbonization sectors, such as power grid optimization, energy efficiency, and demand-side flexibility. So today, we're going to be talking about the promise and the perils of these new data centers and how we can devise policy to manage their grid integration while also fully harnessing the potential for AI to maximize the efficiency of our energy system. And you all will be able to ask your questions to the panelists in our two panels today by using Slido. You can see there's QR codes here on the screens at either side of the edge. You can scan those QR codes, put them into Slido. I will receive them here on my tablet, and I'll put them to the panelists at the end of each panel. We do have some kind of weird notification about possible technical difficulties. So if I see that there are no questions, I'm going to check if that's really the case. In case you are putting in many brilliant questions and I'm just not seeing them, in that case, we'll come around with the microphone to you. So let's start with panel one, which is on powering the intelligence, how to integrate data centers in the EU energy system. So in this panel, we'll be talking about the challenge the data centers provide. How do we get them integrated into the energy grids? Because as I mentioned, they're highly resource intensive. They consume large amounts of electricity and they require considerable grid hosting capacity. So Europe faces the challenge of finding ways to get these into the grid, building this future backbone of the digital economy while also keeping to its sustainability and decarbonization goals. There are a few EU areas of policy that can help with this. We have the upcoming heating and cooling strategy from the Commission. We have the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive that could promote a new rating scheme for data centers and foster their integration into the system. So, how can we get the policy right to manage the integration without overloading the grid? Let's ask our excellent panelists that we have here with us today. We have here from the European Commission, Rosalinde van der Vlies, who is the Director of the Just Transition, Consumers, Efficiency, and Innovation Unit at the Commission's Energy Department. We have Spanish MEP Nicolas González Casares, who is a member of the European Parliament's Industry and Energy Committee. We have Georg Zachman, who is a Senior Fellow at the think tank Bruegel. We have Renato Mazzoncini, who is CEO of the Italian utilities company A2A. And we have Isabel Kemlin, who is the Vice President of the European Data Center Association. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Rosalind, I wanted to start with a question for you. As I mentioned, there's a couple of areas of EU policy that can help out here. And we know the data centers are critical for Europe's competitiveness and sovereignty. But of course, they also use a lot of energy, as I mentioned. So how can those challenges be addressed through EU policy?
Thank you so much, Dave, and good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here on this beautiful day in Brussels. I think we are very, very lucky and fortunate. So yeah, you mentioned indeed data centers, a big opportunity for the European Union, of course also some challenges, but I think we're here all today to make sure that we turn these challenges into opportunities. Because as you mentioned, data centers are really the backbone of our economy and are extremely important for our competitiveness and also for our sovereignty. So what can the European Commission do? I mean, I would say that there are basically 4 tools that we have in our European Commission toolbox that we will be using to make sure that we turn these challenges into opportunities for the European Union. And the first one is that we can set a strategic direction for the European Union. And you already mentioned one of the instruments in which we will be setting this strategic direction is indeed the strategic roadmap, so the word already says it, on digitalisation and artificial intelligence in the energy system that we will be hopefully publishing soonish. Of course, it's always a big surprise when exactly we will be publishing it, but it is in the oven, let's say, and very far advanced. So strategic direction setting. And why is this important? This is important because, of course, in the European Union, there are, of course, many differences between member states, many different local, regional, national circumstances. But it's really important that as a European Union, we have a common strategic objective, what we want to achieve together. So the second tool that we have in our toolbox is, of course, legislation, regulatory action. And here we have, of course, already many important regulatory framework, including also covering the data centers. And we also have the Cloud and AI Development Act that is also under preparation. And the strategic roadmap that we are preparing will be perfectly complementing also the Cloud and AI Development Act. So regulation. And why is this important? This is important because it ensures that we have a level playing field across the European Union. Then the third tool that we have in the toolbox is money. Funding. And we have been, of course, also through European Union programs investing a lot in artificial intelligence through, for example, our Horizon Europe program that is focusing on research and development, but also Digital Europe program, for example. So we have been investing a lot to make sure that we can indeed reap the benefits of the data centers and the sustainable integration of data centers in our European energy system. And it's really important that we also now reap the benefits of all the investments that we have been making also in the past years through these European programs. And that is also one of the things that we plan to do in the strategic roadmap, to really make sure that in the end it's taxpayers' money that we have been investing in the sector, that we now make sure that it will also be translated into positive impact. And then the last tool that we have in our toolbox, and it is something that personally I'm really excited about, but it's not a very straightforward tool, but this is really the convening power that we have as a European Commission to bring around the table member states and different industry stakeholders like grid operators, data centers, etc. So we can really, and this is what we're actually also already doing and will be doing more also to implement the strategic roadmap, is really to bring, the whole ecosystem together and to foster structured dialogues where we can try to find solutions faster, where we can learn from each other, exchanging best practices, and I will say a bit more about it later, probably in the conversation as well, where we have a specific objective also in the context of this last tool, which is really, the structured dialogue and bringing the public and the private sector together to work towards common objectives in kind of like a Team Europe approach. So yeah, this is basically kind of like a horizontal helicopter overview of the different tools that we are using to make sure that we can actually answer the question of this conference, which I hope is a rhetoric question, in a positive way. Thank you, Dee. Yeah,
very interesting, the convening power. Maybe we can talk about a little bit more about that later. Let's move from the Commission to the Parliament. Nicolas, the Parliament will be receiving these various proposals when they come out. What do you think can realistically be done through EU policy to help the integration of these data centers?
First, thank you, Dave, and the organization.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, thank you, Dave, and all the participants and the organization. and Eurati for inviting me. Isabel, you said that it's a beautiful day in Brussels, but it's not a beautiful day for the world. So we cannot start this debate without reminding what is really happening in the world and how this can impact also in the things we are dealing and debating today, because we must ensure that data centers are efficient, flexible, and well integrated in the European energy system. But we are facing some risks. First one is that if we want data centers in the EU and we want a great development to integrate AI and so on, we cannot enter in a dual spiral of dependency that is digital and in energy. I mean, we are facing a risk that is a gasification of the development of data centers. And we know that we don't have gas in Europe. We have to buy gas outside of the EU. You can see the prices today. So gas is volatile per se. And we have to base our development of the European data centers in renewables, in local renewables, with better grids and with a better integration of the grids in the energy system and also the data centers. So we have to avoid these risks. First one, the way to do that is to increase renewables at the same pace we increase demand of electricity on data centers. We need some kind of additionality for data centers. Of course, we need more efficient data centers. And I agree with the Commission that we have to implement some standards under EU regulation in order to have not only very efficient data centers, also to take advantage of some flexibility that data centers can have. But believe me, citizens need AI, our society needs AI, but people doesn't want to pay more in their bills for the use of AI. We are talking every day about European competitiveness, but European competitiveness is not going to arrive to us with more dependencies. This is the reality. We have seen the geopolitical situation in these days, so increased dependencies is the best way to reduce our competitiveness. And this has to be taken into account. It's not only about decarbonisation or digital transition. Of course, decarbonisation is the best way to increase European competitiveness. You can see the electricity prices today, what is really happening. So avoid this risk of gasifying our digital transition, I think is also very, very important. It's key. And I have seen a leak from the Commission today and this morning about this strategic roadmap, digital roadmap, and you present an idea that sounds good, but you have to explain me how it's going to work. I mean, you present a tripartite template for data centers developers, the energy actors, and also local authorities. But you have to explain me why this is going to be good for the system and why not PPAs, bilateral PPAs between energy actors and consumers is not going to work, because the European Commission, during the electricity market design reform, say that we don't want a PPA template, an European PPA template. But you go now, that is bilateral, and you go now a tripartite that is even more difficult to create a fair functioning of this market. Please explain me how are you going to do it, because it's a beautiful thing, but you say no to this idea previously.
Yeah, let's come back to that question with PPAs. I'll come back after this first round. But I do want to move on to Georg. As Nicholas mentioned, we are obviously in the context now of very likely exploding energy prices in the coming months. Well, let's see what happens. But it's a real reminder of Europe's energy dependencies, the risks of deepening those dependencies in order to power this AI activity in the data centers if we do it through gas, especially imported gas from the United States. So Georg, tell us, just so we have the context here, how much energy are data centers in Europe using today, and how much is that expected to grow?
Thanks, Dave. Maybe I would like to go in my argumentation saying that we are in a very dynamic situation with data centers, as we all know, in a very uncertain situation, and that this, in my view, calls for ultimate restraint with respect to prescriptive government strategies, with respect to subsidies, and with respect to broad brush rules that are constraining. So we should be very, very careful to let us better understand what is happening before we kind of constrain it in a too strong way. So you asked for the size of data center consumption today. It's already quite substantial. It should be in the order of some 100 terawatt hours. I mean, we already use a lot of cloud computing, video on demand, and all sorts of services. And the expectations by 2030 are ranging from kind of two-digit decreases to more than a doubling of the consumption. So that would be could be some 4 or 5% of EU electricity consumption. But the numbers are extremely uncertain at this stage, because what we don't know is that how much value will be generated by compute. How expensive is compute going to be, because the technology is developing, and how much is then electricity going to cost? And the finding today where this equilibrium point is, what a good demand for electricity from data centers in the European Union is very hard to establish. What I find encouraging is that this sector, in my view, is not a monopoly. So there is not a really strong network effects. Yes, there are big players with big money, but everybody can, in principle, come and build a data center and participate in this thing. So I do not see kind of, and I'm happy to discuss that with others, a world where there is a kind of a winner takes it all, a first mover advantage with these data centers, that we really need to be super careful at that stage on what we are doing. But when we think about new data centers, there are a lot of decisions that each individual data center needs to take. Where does it position itself? So is it going to close to the load? Is it going to go close to where cheap electricity is? Is it going to Finland or Spain or Germany? It has a lot of choices on where. It has a question of how flexible is it trying to be? Does it kind of slightly overbuild in order to be able to increase or decrease its load, or maybe have a gas turbine or a battery next to it? Another decision point. How does it balance its capital expenditures and its operation expenditure? So is it trying to be super energy efficient and therefore have higher costs? So it has a kind of a closed loop heating system that is connected maybe with heating some greenhouses, and that makes it very, very efficient? Or does it try to have relatively low capital cost but accepts to burn through a bit more electricity that might come from leftover renewables? And then the last question is the size. So does it try to be super big, or does it try to fit into the grid that is available? So a lot of decisions that only the individual investors can really understand what is useful for their purposes, and a lot of trade-offs also in terms of environmental rules, climate, electricity consumption, and so on. So my take would be that we provide data centers as strong as possible the right incentives to do the right thing in this complex world to optimize. So we need a functioning carbon pricing in Europe. We need relatively localized electricity prices if possible. We need to understand, we need to have marginal prices so that electricity, they know essentially when electricity is expensive and when it is cheap, to understand whether they should be flexible or not. They should not get any strange subsidies, and we should make it much more transparent where connection is possible, what it costs, so that they can decide. And the last and maybe most provocative point is we might want to rethink the way in which we allocate scarce connections to the distribution system. Currently, it's this queuing system, it's very uncertain, nobody really knows. And I mean, as an economist, you would not be surprised calling for some type of auctioning system that essentially then maybe the money is then used to lower the cost for all other great users that are then also better off if more people connect. So to summarize, I think we are in a very uncertain world, a lot of trade-offs to be made by the actors. I think the market can largely deliver. We should give the market the right incentives. But if we go out with very broad brush energy efficiency rules that apply from south of Italy to the north of Finland and don't care about what type of electricity is being used, then we overly constrain maybe the system.
Thanks, Georg. Renato, let's turn to you next for the perspective of utilities. You guys are a multi-utility, so involved in different areas, and also a key player in Milan, which is one of Europe's most dynamic data center hubs. How is A2A positioning itself in response to the surge in investments that we've seen in data centers, and what kinds of solutions are available for data center operators as they develop?
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everybody. Well, the situation in Italy is this one. We start from a number of data center slightly small, 168, and with a total power installed really small, 500, 600 megawatts. So the average size of every data center is 3-4 megawatts. To understand connection in medium voltage, because connection in high voltage is up to 10 megawatt. The only data center really medium size is in Milano, owned by Telecom Italia, 30 megawatt. This is the situation till now. What happens probably after the big development of data center in the flaps, now Milano and also Madrid and other situations are really in the focus of a lot of developers. And since the 1st of January 25 till now, the total demand of new connection for data center arrived to be 70 gigawatt. To understand, the peak power of all Italy is more or less 50 gigawatt. The peak power of Milan, we are the DSO, the distributor of the power grid in Milano, is 1.5. So 70 is a number completely foolish. But studying what really can be the forecast of a real development of data center in Italy, that in my opinion is super important and super interesting for Italy, for Europe, for the digital shape in the future, we imagine to arrive to have 3-4 gigawatt of new data center in Italy, 60% in Lombardy, 40% near Milano. That means to have in Milano a couple of gigawatt new data center. That means more than all the peak power in Milano. So A2A is a multi-utility company. A multi-utility company is a strange company because the multi-utility company was born only in Italy and in Germany, like business model. So with a large spread of activity from water management to public illumination to generation and so on. In A2A we have two pillars, energy transition, in which we are the second player after Enel in generation, power grid and market. And the other pillar is circular economy, in which we are the first player in waste cycle, in particular waste to energy, water cycle and district heating, first player in district heating, also in Milano. So when we have seen that there is a so incredible demand of data center, the question was how is possible to help our country and our Europe to face the opportunity of data center, reducing the risk that Nicolas said about the fact that people has to pay a high cost, in particular for gas in this moment, and not only. And so the idea is, possible to manage the development of data center in a more sustainable way? Question mark. Because the big risk, in my opinion, Nicolas, now is that all the developer has only KPI the time to market. And so the risk is to develop a fleet of new data center really unsustainable, because the time to market is the only KPI that they consider for the development. So our goal is to be able to face the time to market, for example, because we have in Lombardy high voltage connection, because we have plants, but we have also the possibility to help the sustainability of the data center. One very simple example, we manage the district heating in Milano. And in this moment, Milano, the climatization in Milano for buildings, the feedstock is gas or the heat recovery from our waste-to-energy plant in Milano. So more or less 20% of the city with feedstock that arrives from waste-to-energy, so heat recovery, CO2 zero, let's say, and the other is gas. And we forecast that using technologies to recover the heat from data center, we will be able to give feedstock for other 300,000 apartments in Milano coming from data center. Consider that in all Milano there are more or less 800,000 apartments, 150,000 sourced by the waste-to-energy plant. In the future, other 300,000 from the data center. Is possible? Yes. We started with a pilot in Brescia, that is another town that we manage in Lombardy. And in October, we'll do the first connection with the data center. The name is Avalon Free. Is a data center that manage all the internet connection in Italy. And we connected it with the data center. You know that, for example, in Helsinki, if I will remember, there is a data center managed by Microsoft connected with district heating. So it's possible. And it's super interesting because in this case, it's much better also for all the water management of data centers. So you are able to face two problems. PUE, so more sustainable data center, and with water management, much more efficiency. So this is our goal, to put together our two legs, our two pillars, because we need generation, we need power grid, and we manage power grid, in particular in Lombardy. From the other side, from district heating and water management, we can help a lot. The only problem, Nicolas, is that I don't think that it's possible to face only with renewable the topic. Because, for example, in Lombardy, we have the sun, 1,500 hours in the year. The wind in the islands and in the south of Italy, 2,500 hours. And some hydro production, but in this moment the hydro production, Italy is the third country in Europe for hydro production, Norway, France and Italy, but is more storage today, because the dam is the only super big storage that we have for energy. So it's difficult to use hydro for base load energy for data center. A data center needs base load energy. So the other topic is how it's possible to face, and I think that in this moment it's very difficult to imagine to face the demand of base load for data center without a thermal plant, with gas. And this is a big topic. No? In the last week we have seen that the risk is very high. But imagine to face 8,700 hours in the year with renewable in this moment is technically impossible. So we have to work to develop renewable and consider that A2A is super focused in renewable. So we are investing in generation 100% of our money in renewable. But if you ask me tomorrow, a couple of gigawatt of data center in Milano, imagine the construction in 28, 29, how is possible to give power? Is difficult to stay without gas. So this is a topic that remains on the table.
Isabel, let's go to you for the data center perspective. So we've heard there that Italy has a lot of these smaller data centers, 168 data centers, 500 to 600 megawatts, growing, but that's already a fairly big amount of energy. So how have data centers been working with energy providers to get them connected to the grid and to accommodate this very large energy use?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite as well. Very nice. Last week it was raining here, but now Brussels is showing its best side. So I will come back to that question, but I think that we all are aware now that there is no AI, no digital sovereignty, and no competitive Europe without data centers. And no data centers actually without a functioning and affordable energy system. And Europe's digital future is no longer theoretical. It's being built right now through AI, cloud, smart grids, electrification, digital public services. And at the center of all of this is actually the data centers. And we are actually part of the solution. I think it's really important to think about us as data centers and power grids. It can no longer be treated separately. We need to see us as one system for being able to, well, being the competitive EU we want to be. You mentioned earlier if there are things happening from a energy efficiency perspective. The good news is that this has been happening for decades. So the data center industry, since the electricity bill is very high, it's always been worked with. So we have been designing efficiency into facilities from day one. We have been sourcing renewable electricity through long-term contracts. We're investing in flexibility, storage, and smarter grid infrastructure, what you're seeing. So this sector has delivered strong efficiency gains from a sustainability perspective for decades and is actually committed to the climate neutrality by 2030. But we also see the big challenge ahead. And the real bottleneck is not technology, it's actually collaboration and coordination. So from an EUDCA's perspective, we see three things. We need to recognize that the digital infrastructure is critical infrastructure. We'll need to look at the permitting and integrated energy planning. Second, we want to enable flexibility through incentives and be aware that not one size fits all, because we need to be careful of what we are asking for also as loads. Thirdly, we need to focus on the system level outcomes and also acknowledging that there are diversities in data centers, not only from a customer perspective, but it's also from a regional perspective and from a technical perspective. But we are here and we're ready to work with policymakers and regulators and grid operators and energy providers to make this integration work. And the good thing, and now I'm coming to your question actually, is that this work has already started. So that was one of the reasons why I was here last week, where we are working closely together from an initiative of the EU Commission, and looking together with all those stakeholders how we can work together, because we need to understand each other's world. That's kind of number one. And then, of course, we need to see to also that, well, regulation is not just a regulation that is there, but it's actually practical and driving the right behaviors that we want to see, and not against what our goals are. And the EU, through the CAIDA, has set up a goal of tripling the capacity for data until 2030. That's a lot. Even we in the industry think like maybe doubling, but tripling. We need to work really, really hard together to actually be able to reach those goals. But I think there is a reason why the EU Commission is setting these high goals, because otherwise our the competition against US, Asia, Middle East, they are running faster than we are. And we need to be smart about this. But we can be. And I'm really committed to do this. And we're working really hard from EUDCA to make sure that this is also done in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Great. So a couple of things that were made in comments in that opening round that I think some of you may want to respond to. So Rosalinda, Nicolas was asking about what he saw in the leak, about PPAs, agreements with consumers. What was the Commission's thinking behind that?
Yes, so thanks indeed, even though I have to say officially, of course, I'm not commenting on the leak, but I can definitely take the question. So yeah, I mean, Isabel already mentioned, I mean, we have started the work, bringing together the different stakeholders, and Isabel, I mean, I think you made a very important point. We need to look at this from a system perspective, and we need to also understand, the different needs of the different actors, including, the grid operators, local municipalities, our data centers, etc. So, and thanks a lot to you, Isabel, and for your commitment to continue this structured dialogue that we have already started, actually, with the industry and the MEML. And I'm really inspired to see this commitment to really work together. I mean, Isabel mentioned, the strategic objective of tripling the number of data centers for the European Union. And indeed, we need to be together, bold and ambitious for our competitiveness, for our sovereignty. And I think it's really, really very good to see, this commitment to find solutions together, because there's
establish a clear idea, that is this idea of first ready, first connected. Because there were some kind of speculation in some countries about this development and how they go for the connections. I believe in additionality, and I believe that renewables can solve this bottleneck. The Irish regulator, you know that in Ireland they have, the data centers are consuming more than the city of Dublin. That is the biggest city of Ireland. The Irish regulator recently required data centers to meet 80% of their annual energy demand covered by additional renewable. So maybe we can develop in Ireland, also in Italy, also in Germany, also in Sweden, wherever. The social dimension that I mentioned in the beginning. And finally, I believe that energy efficiency. I cannot accept that artificial intelligence is not intelligent in the use of energy. So for sure there will be solutions in future that reduce the amount of electricity consumed. For sure there will be some models that will be winners. And of course we have to avoid these models that are connected to military interventions in other countries. But for sure this is going to develop very fast. And we cannot forget that today there are models that use less energy than others. We have to think also in this idea of green algorithms to give a premium to these algorithms that are more efficient. So, last but not least, ETS. Every single attack to ETS will make European electricity more expensive, will make us even more dependent. So I'm 100% reluctant to this idea.
And they're like, what's in it for me? Why am I paying for somebody in another continent's data use? How do we avoid this phenomenon of the cost going to not the actual users of the data?
Let me try a nuanced answer. On the one hand, if you build data centers very close to certain cities, you do that because there is some kind of value created there. So we see a lot of data centers in Ireland, largely also because there is then the IT jobs around, and we see in Frankfurt and Paris because of the financial infrastructure that is there that kind of requires the short latency periods, and therefore there is some local value of some of the data centers, not of course not of all of them. Some can be placed in more remote areas where they probably also then have lower cost. The suggestion that I try to push with, in principle, my understanding, and I'm happy to also hear from the data center industry, the core challenge at the moment for building data centers is getting grid connections to typically the distribution grid, that there's long queues for getting their applications for, you said 70 gigawatt or so in Italy. So, and the whole allocation system seems to be completely broken. If you have an auctioning system in place, in principle, you would potentially collect money for the distribution grid, and the distribution grid can then lower the cost in the region for the tariff payers as one of the potential benefits. It comes with a lot of discussion. I mean, it's not a completely new idea. It's out there. It has its drawbacks, but I think in the situation where we are, that we have this scarcity on grid connections, maybe the fairest way to attribute them and also to collect some money to help in the region could be more of an auctioning system. Another point that I just wanted to highlight, and was super happy that Nicolas made it so strongly. This ETS point is extremely important to me. I think if we don't protect the ETS at that stage in Europe, it will mean huge uncertainty for the market. Essentially, all the investors in the past that invested on green solutions will see significant losses, and we will have higher interest rates in the future for everybody that is going to invest in that direction, and that will make all future investments in the right direction, because it's the only direction that we have left, so much more expensive that we delay the process and have, as Nicolas said, in the end we are going to have higher prices because we got rid of the ETS, as paradox as it sounds.
Isabel, I wanted to do the same question to you about the fairness question. Also, while I have you, can I just get your take on this idea in the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive to have this new rating scheme for data centers? What's your take on that? First on the fairness and acceptance.
Yes. Two comments. One on the planning and the queue. You were mentioning very, very high numbers in Italy. We see those high numbers all over the place, but I think what's really needed there, and we actually have a good example in the Nordics, where Norway now is publishing total transparency about the queue. That actually also removes a lot of speculation. It's very scary to be transparent, but if everyone needs to be transparent, that actually we're playing at the same play field, so to speak. That was one comment. The second comment that I would like to make is on the social benefits. I think if there is a data center establishing in a municipality, because this is very local, if the municipality is actively doing something also to create things that comes with it, then we can see real big benefits. I will give an example, well, actually two examples. One example is from when Meta established their first data center outside of US, which was in Luleå, up in the northern parts of Sweden. I come from that region, and when I was a kid, we were going there and joking that this was, little Stockholm, the capital city. Now, when I return, it really is. There is a confidence in the region that you can actually land huge international players. So not only is it data centers, but it's chemical, it's batteries, and a lot of others is iron, green iron. So it's a lot of things happening there, a lot more restaurants, hotels, who needs to take care of everyone. And also from a research perspective, it's world-leading research within data centers taking place in that region. But then that is a collaboration. So things that doesn't just happen by itself, it needs to be a collaboration. The second example is actually from a small city in the middle of Sweden called Falun, where they are using a lot of local providers. So if you're seeing a data center, you say that it's not so many people working there. From one perspective, we're an infrastructure. We don't want tons of people working within the infrastructure. We want it to be efficient. But the number of people who are hired by the company is not that many, but it's actually a construction site that is going to be for more than 10 years. So there are more than 800 people going in and out through the doors every day for that site specifically. So I think there are more things happening from that perspective. If we look at coming to your question about the energy efficiency directive, the industry has been welcoming this. We are really happy that we start to measure and to show the actual numbers, because this will actually also show that what we're doing is good. And from the idea from the EU Commission is actually to, first of all, start to measure and then understand that the KPIs that we're measuring are the right ones, and then actually put in a label on the data centers, which is happening as we speak. And then, after that, there are discussions about minimum performance standards. We welcome this journey, but it needs to be a journey, because it's highly important that we're not driving again towards the wrong outcomes. So we need to know that what we're measuring is the right things, and also that it's transparent, that it's factual, and we also need to see that it's good from all regions.
Renato, two questions for you. One is, we've had two comments about ETS and the dangers of suspension of ETS. That is an idea coming from the Italian government. I wonder what is your take on whether or not that would be helpful for you guys. And second question on the heating and cooling strategy. We know that this is one possible solution for data centers, that they can help in a heating and cooling strategy by getting heat out into systems. How do you think that strategy can support decarbonization efforts by cooperating with data centers?
About ETS is easy, because I fully agree with Nicolas. ETS is the backbone of a Green Deal, and if in Italy today we have 50% of renewable production of the total demand, is linked also to ETS. And what I think is that in this moment, consider that with the marginal price, the gas fix the price today for 75% of the hours, but do only 40% of the total production. That means easily that every 1% more renewable means 2% less hours linked to the gas. So we have simply to do our national plan for renewable and to wait some years. Probably in that period, we need some public money to help some specific sectors, like in other countries, to manage competitiveness between steel plant in Italy and Germany. The problem is that in a Europe in which, in Germany, for example, there are 26 billion of public money on the industry, in Italy 0, is not easy. I understand the sector that has problems. So, but ETS is super fundamental in my opinion. Consider that I am an electrotechnical engineer. I drive electrical cars since 2003. So you can understand my position about electrification, decarbonisation, and so on. So there is no doubt. Talking about data center, I come back also to give an answer to your second question. What is really interesting about our pilot, the first pilot in Brescia, is that the PUE is one. One means that 100% of energy is for server room, 0% energy for lighting, cooling, and so on, because the chip are as a cooling system directly in conduction with the pipeline of the district heating. No one works in the data center, so also the light is switch on, switch off, and so 100% of energy works only for data center. Consider, guys, that overall in the world, the PUE of data center is 1.3, 1.4, more or less. So 30-40% of energy, not for server room, but in particular for cooling system and not only. So it's clear that we have to reduce the consumption of energy in data center, and solution with cooling system that really works, able to decarbonize, for example, a city, are super important. The second consideration about PPA. I don't think that we need anything to sign PPA, because the data center is the dream of the customer for every utility that has to sell PPA, because base load, long period, predictable, total predictable of the consumption, so it's clear that it's perfect. In the last years, we work a lot to sign PPAs with steel plant, paper plant, and so on. Super difficult because their market is up and down, and so it's very difficult also for them to sign PPAs. Yes, 5% of the consumption is possible, but 100%. Data center needs PPAs. Also, the price of energy is not the first topic for data centers, so also the negotiations are not so critical. The problem is that we are not able, believe me, Nicolas, to give base load energy with renewable, because using battery storage and also dam-like storage, we are not able to arrive to 8,700 hours. This is the problem. So the problem is how to fill the gap that remains. And in my opinion, the only solution is to reduce the gap, probably to, let's say, 20%, and to fill up with thermogas, with carbon capture and storage, or solution like this. In this moment, the problem of gas in Europe is huge because the consumption in Europe is huge. But if we will be able to reduce a lot the use of gas, I think that we can survive.
Well, let me go to some questions from the audience. We've had lots of questions, so I can tell it is functioning well. First question here to Georg. It's from Arka Chanda from the Grantham Research Institute at LSE. What pathways do you see for European data centers procuring clean baseload power? And is new technology like SMR, small modular reactors, a possibility there?
So, I mean, my sense is that in the end, we will have a European power mix that is hopefully going to be as efficient and clean as possible. And I am personally not entirely enthused about the idea of having specific power mixes for specific applications fixed in, because it makes the world more rigid and complicated and typically more expensive. So ideally, I would reframe the question into which power mix would you like to see in 2040 and 2050. And then my sense is that the grids package, for example, provides a very interesting exercise now of the kind of more joint European foresight on the development of grids and the electricity system, and that this could help us all to better understand where we are actually moving. Because in the current world, I find it extremely hard to foresee. We have the national energy and climate plans that are inconsistent and don't tell us really a clear direction of travel where Europe is moving. I would hope that a more European reference scenario that we can all dispute and discuss with would help us to get to kind of lower the level of uncertainty of the future development. On the SMR question, my personal answer is that for this phase of build up of data centers in the next 2 decades, it's not going to play a big role, and after that we shall see. I mean, I've not seen any SMR a part of PowerPoints.
Just very quickly, Christopher Healy from the audience had the same question, but specifically for Rosalinda. Is there a role for nuclear power to power, particularly in the short or medium term, or is this just too far away to make a difference?
Well, I mean, the politically correct answer is that, of course, it is up to the member states to decide what is the right clean energy mix for their local circumstances. What I will say is that the Commission has launched this alliance on small modular reactors with a very clear objective to go as fast as possible, 2030 or 35, for the deployment of SMRs in Europe. So, I mean, I can say that, you know, we are, from a policy perspective, supporting also this avenue, but in the end, the solutions that will be decided, you know, by the member states. I just want to, if I may, quickly also react to what Georg said on this forecasting, because we are in the process of preparing also a review of the governance regulation for the end of this year. And as part of this, we are also preparing a study on systems need for the European Union's energy system. So I hope that this may be kind of like a reference scenario that will then start a debate for this forecasting that you refer to. Thank you.
Isabel, the questioner also wanted to know your answer for that about nuclear, how you're feeling about nuclear. And sorry, there was another question for you here that was very good, and now I lost it. It was about transparency. Here, why don't you mention
I
that
start
first?
with the
Yes.
nuclear one while you're searching. I think that there will be, it is an option to have the SMR, small nuclear reactors. But of course, we are also, if we compare to US and Europe, the grid there is totally different compared to ours, and we're actually ahead here. So we have a better grid, and we should utilize this instead. Maybe there will be, you know, because there is a lack of power right now, there will be maybe temporary solutions, but I think also, as was mentioned before, the best thing is actually to have an integrated system, one system that we're using, and that the energy also then, of course, can be shared with others when needed.
Okay, I found the other question. But also, in doing so, I found another question for you, which is what about geothermal? Question from Emile Martini. Have you considered geothermal energy as a way to provide baseload capacity for data centers? And here's the question I was looking for, from Peter Dunn. In terms of regulation, industry normally wants predictability. How is the data center industry going to cope with the growing number of national strategies and regulations on data centers, such as in Germany and in Ireland? Are we seeing a worrying trend toward fragmentation here?
So now you talked about the topic that I am really passionate about, so I forgot your first question.
Geothermal, very quick, is that possible?
Yeah,
as well?
the geothermal, to be very honest, maybe. I don't know if it's a good alternative or not. We need to look at different sources. And the second one, from a regulations perspective, that is our nightmare.
Yeah.
Because we need to realize that actually, if Europe is going to be competitive, if, do we want to build it now, here, for our sovereignty and for ourselves, or do we want to buy it forever? If we're regulating so we get 27 different ways of doing things, this is an industry that is very, it's from one perspective extremely local, but it's also very international. So there is not a lot of players, but if we're doing separate things all over the place, why should Europe? So I think we need to really be thinking long-term here and be very careful so we don't end up with 27 different ways of doing things. We have enough with a lot of different regulations that are not fully coordinated, and that we want your help from the Commission as well. And we're seeing those initiatives, and we're really happy that it's going in that direction. But we need to simplify the regulation.
I see Rosalind nodding, so I think she agrees. At the risk of opening a can of worms with only 2 minutes left here, but one last question to Nicolas, which is from Theophane Hartman, and this is about an aspect we haven't talked about so far, which is the security of data centers. So building on your introduction, Nicolas, what impact do panelists see regarding the Iran strike on a data center in the United Arab Emirates on Sunday? 2 Amazon Web Services data centers are still down. When we're talking about connecting these data centers to the energy grid, do we also need to think about connecting them to the military grid?
I'm not an expert, but do you remember the blackout in Spain last year? We ran out of electricity for hours, but data centers still running. So we need backup systems. And these backup systems also provides flexibility. But of course, again, not all the backups can be powered by oil or gas. We have to find better solutions. But of course, security is key, and now we have more critical infrastructure. You say, data centers are infrastructure. Of course they are. But we are adding risks to our infrastructure. We have to provide also security, and it's not going to be easy because it's a disseminated infrastructure. I think I don't have any concrete solution. Regarding SMRs, if I may, if Trump doesn't destroy everything, I imagine SMRs, I imagine that in my retirement, in 2035, I will be at home, in my home heated by my AI agent, enjoying a coffee, reading the news of the progress of the first smart SMR constructed in Europe, not already finished. I mean, we cannot imagine this big development of the AI being supported by small modular reactors. For sure, AI won't need the same amount of energy when the small modular reactors will be in place, for sure.
Renato, you wanted to comment on SMRs?
About the SMR. Imagine to be the CEO of an utility that has to sign a contract for a couple of billion to buy an SMR, 200, 300 megawatt, in which the company that sells the SMR and your business plan says that to have a return of investment, you need to sell energy for 60 years with an average price of, let's say, 80, 90 euros per megawatt hour. So the first risk is a super commercial risk. The payback period is 40 years. So I imagine that it's impossible to sign this contract without a public company, let's say a public authority, that sign a contract for you to buy the energy for 60 years to a fixed price. Decreed like with the renewable, but the difference is not 15 years, 20 years, but 60 years. But we can imagine that there are some countries that decided to put out a decree that says, okay, there is a new kicks decree to have to buy energy for 60 years. Your problem, my problem, remain the industrial risk, because I can sell energy if a machine that no one have ever seen in the world really works for 60 years. Frankly speaking, I imagine that today is impossible for every CEO of a company that stay on the market to sign a contract to buy an SMR. So the only solution for nuclear in every time and every part of the world is if a government decided, like in France, to invest in nuclear. It's impossible to invest in nuclear in this moment on the market, in my personal opinion. So it's out of discussion in the possible solution, because really the business plan is totally unfeasible.
I think there's a pretty clear consensus on that here. Listen, we've had so many good questions. I wish I had time to take more of them, but we are out of time. But tell you what, I'm going to keep them also for the next panel. So maybe we can, because some of them are also related to how AI can help the energy system, which is the topic of the next panel. But for now, let's close out this panel. I want to thank the panelists for some great and very interesting insights here. How about a round of applause for them? And now we're going to take a 15-minute coffee break, and the next from there, we'll be back in here at 12:30 for the next panel, What's in it for the energy sector? Thanks a lot. About to get started, I invite the panelists here on stage. No worries. Gaspar, you can sit here. Then Thomas, you can sit, let's see, Jutta is live, so you can sit here. Yep. Hi. You can take that last chair at the end. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the coffee break. We're now going into the second panel, which, as promised, is the more optimistic one. So we're not looking at the problems caused by data centers, but the solutions that they can generate for the energy system. So in the first panel, we talked about data centers as a problem to be solved in terms of energy generation. We very quickly touched on security issues for data centers at the end of the panel, and now we're going to talk about them as a solution. Despite their energy-intensive profiles, data centers and AI applications can substantially support the clean energy transition of the energy sector by boosting renewables efficiency, enhancing grid stability, and fostering automation. The upcoming strategic roadmap for digitalisation and artificial intelligence in the energy sector will address such opportunities and the further arising challenges of AI integration in the energy sector. For those of you watching online, I know there were some hiccups in the live broadcast. I think those are smoothed out now. But in any event, you will be able to find a full, clean video of the event later on if you come back to the same website. So let's begin our panel on how AI will integrate, benefit, or possibly challenge our energy systems. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have Gaspard Demure, who is the Deputy Head of Unit for AI Innovation and Policy Coordination with the EU's AI Office in the European Commission. Joining us remotely, we have German Green MEP Jutta Paulus, who is a member of the European Parliament's Environment Committee. We have Thomas Spencer, who is a Senior Energy Analyst with the International Energy Agency, IEA. And we have Roberto Tasca, who is President of A2A, the Italian multi-utility company, who we also heard from before. Gaspard, let's start with a question for you. What kind of potential does AI have for transforming Europe's energy system, in your opinion? And how can this be addressed in the upcoming strategic roadmap for digitalization and artificial intelligence in the energy sector?
Thanks a lot for having me there this morning. It's a great opportunity. Of course, I mean, we're speaking about the benefits now, but not opposing at all what was discussed this morning. Just to say that the first point, the first great opportunity is that data centers help us stay in the race for the development of AI models and systems in Europe. That's maybe the first point. We were discussing this morning the importance of sovereignty, of strategic autonomy. We see the recent developments in that field. Well, the European Union in 2025 adopted the AI Continent Action Plan, and the purpose of that is to stay in the race as a leader for the development of AI models and systems. Part of that is, of course, the development of data centers for the training, for the inference of AI models, but not only. You know that we are also in the process of developing gigafactories, so very large data centers, not cloud, but kind of training centers for very large models. So this is actually a very important element for sustaining our sovereignty. The goal, we discussed that this morning, is to triple the number of data centers in Europe in the next 5 to 7 years. This is essential not only for the training phase of having the AI models, but also for the inference and the reduction of latency for the use of AI. Now, once you have these models and systems, you can apply them to the different sectors. And this is what we try to do with the Apply AI strategy that we adopted very recently in October 2025. And this will be extremely important for the energy sectors, but not only. In the energy sector, we see huge potential. First of all, we were speaking about renewables. We have more and more renewables in the grid, but this creates challenges for balancing out the grid. So we need AI models of a very large dimension to be able to balance out the grid more efficiently, to bring the parameters of renewables into account. But we have also production of energy inside. We have predictive maintenance, we have digital twins, so we could use AI to also reduce energy consumption or loss in the production, for instance, of gas or electricity using AI. And finally, we were speaking about citizens this morning. I mean, AI could empower citizens in their consumption of energy to reduce their bills, to reduce their consumption. So what are we doing for reaping that benefit? We, in the Apply AI strategy, we are actually financing, we are actually providing access to computing for the development of frontier AI models in the field of energy. This is one of the key actions that we will be developing in close cooperation with our NR colleagues in the roadmap context. So putting the different elements of the energy system together into a frontier AI model, improving the forecasting optimization, looking at weather forecasting and balancing out the development, the use of renewables into the grid. This is extremely important and we will continue to do so. But energy sector is not just energy production and consumption in the energy sector. We also have, for instance, sectors such as the building sector, using 40% of the final energy consumption in Europe. You can imagine how AI could be used in that context for the optimization of heating and cooling and really improving energy consumption in Europe. Last point, we were speaking a lot about cloud, about HPC this morning, so data centers, but indeed the architecture of AI algorithm is also extremely important. So in the context of the AI Act implementation, we are looking at the energy consumption of AI models and how we can improve our understanding of the various consumption of the models based on the architecture. And I'll stop there. I'm very happy to come back with examples.
Great. And just a reminder, you guys can ask your questions to the panelists by putting your questions into Slido, and I'll put them to the panelists at the end. Next, let's turn to Jutta Paulus, who is joining us remotely. Welcome, Jutta. So I wanted to ask you about, we're going to be talking about the benefits that AI can bring to the energy system, but I know there's also some concerns, as ever, with artificial intelligence. What are your concerns, potential concerns, about the use of AI in the energy field, and how could EU policy address some of those concerns?
Yes, good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for having me. Well, we've heard already a lot from the honorable speaker before me, how AI can actually empower the energy transition, but I'm sure that in the session before, where I unfortunately could not participate, there were already some concerns raised, and one of my main concerns is actually energy efficiency, because right now energy efficiency doesn't play a huge role when it comes to building and operating data centers. And there, European policy could, of course, do something. We have already done something in the Energy Efficiency Directive, and as far as I know, the Commission is right now developing an energy efficiency label for data centers. And for me, it's very important that this is a meaningful label, that it's, so for example, it differentiates between renewable energy real purchases like PPAs or direct connections, or just buying, so to speak, a certificate from renewable energy that has already been built, so there wouldn't be any added value to the energy transition. So that is on the operation of the data center itself. Then the second concern, of course, which is voiced to me a lot by citizens and also by companies, what about data protection? Might there be hidden doors in AI software that actually gives away very sensible data, very sensitive data to actors outside the European Union, where we're not sure what they could actually also do by, let's say, changing the goals of the software. Because, of course, an AI tool is only as good as the data it is trained on, and also as good as the algorithm that says, please optimize for this and that. So if you have an AI tool that is, let's say, trained on fossil production, fossil grid balancing, it might not find solutions lying outside that realm. So if all AI, and also a third concern in that realm is when it comes to the use of AI tools by energy consumers or energy producers. You mentioned that forecasting is better. Yes, sure. But imagine everyone is using the same AI tool, and all those different actors have the same recommendation. And this might lead to repercussions when it comes to grid stability that we might not even see today. So that is something which should be guarded very, very carefully. And I'm not sure whether we can do anything with policy there. But at the end of the day, it is an issue which we have to keep under our close surveillance. We have seen the European Commission coming forward with a grids package, with electrification action plan, and I think AI has to play an important role there, but we have to make sure that at the end of the day, this is to the benefit of our consumers and our companies, and not necessarily only to the benefit of a, let's say, small group of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks, Jutta. Thomas, I want to go to you next for a global perspective on this. How would you say that artificial intelligence and maybe data in general is transforming the energy sector in terms of how we use energy, how we harness energy, and how we transport energy?
Yeah, thanks very much to Euractiv and the organizers for the invitation to the IEA. Very happy to be here. I think the short answer to your question is AI is not yet transforming the energy sector. I think we need to keep in mind that AI is not new for the energy sector. You know, if we think of modern AI as neural networks, the first commercial applications of neural networks were in the very early 90s. So we already have 35 years of applying them across the real economy. If we look at a sector like oil and gas, for example, oil and gas has been using advanced computation for a long time. The oil and gas sector owns 4 out of the 20 fastest supercomputers in the world because they have been using these tools for some time. So, you know, in addition, the generative AI boom is not necessarily the same kind of models that we need to apply across the energy sector, which may be more simple machine learning models and so on. So we have been using AI in the energy sector for quite some time, and we see that the energy sector is changing, but it's not changing at an extremely rapid pace. I think the promise is that, you know, AI is getting better, and that we are generating more and more data that can be used to train AI models and apply them across the energy sector. So at the IEA, we made some estimates of the total energy and emission savings potential from applying, you know, well-proven case studies of AI tools across the energy sector. We were quite conservative in what we chose. We chose only case studies that had documented quantitative benefits, so we're not talking about, you know, very futuristic case studies. And what we found were emission savings by 2035 at the global level of about 1.4 gigatons. And so, you know, 1.4 gigatons is a significant amount, but let's not forget that the energy sector emits 38 gigatons of CO2 today. So this is helpful, but it doesn't change dramatically, you know, what we need to do to decarbonize the energy sector, which is deploy clean energy technologies and improve energy efficiency. So AI can help, but it's not a game changer in the near term. I'll get onto in a moment the more long-term perspective. So if we look at the kinds of things that, you know, AI is good at today, it's good at optimizing complex systems where there are trade-offs and where there's large amounts of data that models can be trained on. So things like, optimizing the HVAC systems in large commercial buildings to take into account temperature, energy market conditions, customer behavior, and so on. Things like, we already talked about the management and optimization of electricity networks. Industrial production is very data intensive. We generate a huge amount of data in modern industrial facilities, more data than can be processed by human beings, and so AI can help to analyze and process that data, improve the production process, and make things more material and energy efficient. So these are the kind of near-term applications that we looked at in our analysis. I think we also need to be aware that there is potentially more transformational long-term implications. Let me highlight two. The first is around energy innovation. So we are starting to see, I think, the emergence of a new scientific paradigm in sectors like biotechnology with the application of AI models to drug discovery and so on. We will start to see that increasingly in the energy sector, in sectors like material science and material innovation, chemistry applications such as battery innovation. And I think that can start to have in the longer term, so let's say not in the next 5 years, but in the next 10 years and beyond, quite significant implications on the rates of innovation. And then the second, longer term implication, I think we need to start looking at the potential for significant implications in the longer term in industry, with the next generation of AI models really being about general physical AI models that understand the physics of the world and are able to act relatively independently in complex environments. And that could bring about another wave of industrial automation. And I think this is very important for Europe, given where Europe sits in terms of industrial competitiveness and so on. So these two are maybe not 5 years away, but in 5 to 10 years, we could start to see significant implications. There are a number of barriers, which I'm happy to touch on in subsequent questions, and there are a number of advantages that the EU actually has, which I'm happy to touch on in subsequent questions, but let me stop there for the moment.
Great, thanks. So Roberto, we heard there that AI is probably in the early stages of transforming the energy sector, but there's really big potential and big things coming. So at a time when Europe is debating the strategic importance of AI and data centers, do you think we need to strengthen these infrastructures on our continent, strengthen these connections? And how is A2A adjusting to the broader shifts with AI driving these transformations?
Thank you, Dave. And good morning to all of you. I'll first of answering your question, I will say something about what Thomas said before, because I'm not so convinced that it's not a game changer, because we have an intertemporal problem to solve. Increasing the using of AI will increase energy demand. And all over Europe, especially in the south, but also in the north, we are not able at the moment to support with renewable energy the development of AI and data center. So we have to face with a political issue, that is how we can manage, because we can't be, of course, late on the development. We already had lost some path in the past. So we have to put together the development of AI and data center and the capacity of the systems in Europe to support this development, supplying energy. Supplying energy, of course, decarbonized mostly. And I think that it's a very interesting problem that, for example, Enrico Letta talked about in the single market books report he wrote for the European Commission. Because normally we used to talk about capital market union, but maybe we've also to think about the energy market union, because Nicolas before said that we have to use renewable energies to support the development of data center, and I fully agree with him. My CEO said that maybe it's impossible having 100% of supplying through renewable energy, but maybe around 80–85% we can reach it. So the problem is, according to my opinion, why we can avoid to face with some specific problem. In Italy, we have a strong movement against ETS for one reason. We have 40% of our production strictly linked to gas, and it means that our energy costs are higher than other countries. So we are in the single market according to what we sell. It's unavoidable for, I fully agree with ETS system, this is the premise, but it's unavoidable trying to understand how we can move toward an increase in renewables, having in the next 10 years some difficulties in doing that. But in the same time, we have to support the development of AI and data center. I agree with Thomas when he said in the middle run, we will have a lot of improvements, but regarding AI, but I'm an economist, so I can't forget that in the middle and the long run, John Maynard Keynes said that is the time where we will be lost, we'll die. So I'm a bit concerned about the fact that what we can do in the meantime to allow, of course, countries coming from different sources, composition, having one important common aim, following the development of AI and data center as strong as we can, because we can't lose time, of course. So, according to my opinion, this is one of the important issues, because when we talk about AI, of course, we talk about problem regarding defense, security, not only problem regarding data computing or data management. And as we can see during these days, security and defense, especially in Europe, it's a big problem facing with also what the US decided to do regarding the historical relationship we have with them. This is, sorry, I took this first pass, but I have this point that it was in my head just before. Second, I will answer to your question. I think, of course, that is a very important problem, trying to support the integration of AI in national system. For example, in Italy, we have some problems in grid connection, and it's a problem regarding renewable energy too. But, and if we have to think about the connection of new data center, this problem will be larger. The only thing we can do as a private company doing energy is invest money. We used to manage the grid of Lombardy, a big part of Lombardy, and we are, of course, investing a lot of money, try to support the development of the grid and, of course, the capacity of the grid to sustain the increased use of energy that we will have. And I think that it's important doing this kind of job, having a stable pattern for us. According with, we can plan to do our investments planned in the next 10 years. We have, for example, are issuing to the market a 10 years plan, industrial plan, and we are saying to the market, not the vision, but really the figures. We are imagining to do, investing such a kind of money, having such a kind of return, such a kind of EBITDA, and so on. I think that we have to be transparent to the market, to investors, and of course to our citizen and community. Otherwise, the problem is that we will maintain on a national level some differences that will bring a sort of I'm saying, I won't say stop, but I'll say, of course, reducing path of development as European Union in developing AI and data center, and we can do it. We can have it. Thank you.
Jesper, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the Valletta report, the Draghi report, which are focused very much on Europe's competitiveness, but they also bring up the issue of Europe's strategic autonomy, which is a big thing that people are talking about in Brussels right now. What role would you say that AI can play in supporting Europe's strategic autonomy in the energy sector?
So first of all, we need to develop our own AI models for the energy sector. I mean, we see that very large companies like Google are already cooperating with states in the US for developing models for the optimization of the grid. So there will be product on the market. And what we want to avoid is that the data coming from the companies in the energy sector are only used for improving models that are coming from outside of Europe. So data is absolutely crucial, and I mean to be in the race for developing our own model. For that, we do have a specific challenge in Europe with data sharing in the energy sector. As our honorable MEP colleague said, I mean, we have data protection issues related to energy data. We have a lot of different actors in the energy sector, from producers, transmission system operators, distribution. So for the moment, the flow of data between these different actors is still a challenge. And if we want to have, proprietary model built in Europe of very high quality, we need to pool the data between the different actors. So that's kind of a first point. The second point is much more at local level. And I completely agree that for the moment, the uptake of AI in the energy sector, but also in industrial sectors, is just starting. If you take SMEs, for instance, we have 99% of our companies in Europe that are SMEs. Very few of them are really embedding AI in their energy consumption. Just to give you one example of what we can change, we had a Spanish company in the fabric sector, a knitting company, and basically they had a system of production where when you had defect at the end of the production line, you stop the production line and you start again once you have a defect. Now we are speaking about zero defect manufacturing. You have sensors and AI using pattern recognition, and so you stop immediately the production if something wrong is happening. This is avoiding a lot of waste and a lot of energy consumption. What we're doing for the moment is to deploy AI through a network of European Digital Innovation Hub, more than 200 of them all across Europe, where we try to discuss with local entrepreneurs, explaining what AI could give to them, bring to their company in terms of energy consumption reduction. And I think by working both at global level, so at European level, on the development of EU AI models, federating data, we will stay in the race for the development of the model. And then at local level, we need to work with the companies on the uptake of these models and systems.
Jutta, same question for you. How do you think AI can be used to increase Europe's sovereignty, strategic autonomy, both when it comes to data and when it comes to energy?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because it can work both ways. Actually, of course, it can support our strategic autonomy by optimizing our energy system. So I did read a study estimating that in Southeast Asia, the use of AI in tools to, let's say, support consumers of electricity and also producers of electricity could mean savings of 10% of energy production, which would else be wasted or not be used efficiently. I'm not sure whether this really will come true, but I do believe that there is some potential there, although I was a bit taken aback by the 1% number, which the International Energy Agency just mentioned. But let me take you to an example. A friend of mine founded a startup with scientists from a university, and they developed a software which actually uses an AI tool, basically, for small companies, small and medium companies that want to optimize their energy use and that have, let's say, numerous applications. So they may have solar panels on their roof. They may have a PPA with a wind park. They may have one or several battery electric vehicles. They may have storage units. And what this software is doing, it's actually using the weather forecast and also the production forecast of the company to optimize the energy use. So for example, when there's a forecast, oh, we'll have an extremely sunny day tomorrow, and tomorrow will be Saturday, so it'll only be a half day of work. Then, of course, the software will say, hey, let's charge the battery electric vehicle not today, let's just run it to nearly zero, it doesn't really matter, no one will use it tomorrow, and let's charge it tomorrow when we have a lot of supply. And there, in that way, the companies really save a lot of money, and at the end of the day, every kilowatt hour that we can produce using our own means, using homegrown renewable energy, makes us less depending on petrol imports that, as we are seeing these days again, are really putting also our economy at risk, because gas prices, oil prices have gone up hugely, which will be a big problem for our chemical industry, for all the energy intensive industry, and also of course for our citizens which still use fossil fuels to keep their homes warm or cold depending on where they live. So I think that we have an opportunity here, but as has been said, also it's very important that we don't make ourselves dependent on AI tools that are developed in third countries, which might within days turn from trusted friends and partners to, let's say, rather difficult members of the international community. So I think it's high time to think of AI tools also as a strategic value, and I'm sure that the Commission is already thinking about how they can support the development and use of European-based software, of European-based data use, and also, of course, which is so important in building data centers with all the problems that run with energy use, water consumption, and so forth, to make sure that we have actually a fallback option. I mean, I'm in the European Parliament. We use American software. We use American server software. We use even clouds that are not based in the European Union. And that is something where we're extremely vulnerable. So I do think that we have an opportunity and also an obligation here to, let's say, be a bit more cautious when it comes to trusting in relationships that have worked for decades, but which might not work tomorrow.
For sure. Roberto, I wanted to come, so one point that Jutta was talking about there was some of these solutions that involve consumers, right? So where the AI or the data is telling them when to charge their car, when to use their appliances, but that relies on the consumers having this equipment and having this technology at home. That's been a problem. For instance, here in Brussels, believe it or not, we still don't have even smart meters. We're still using these old-fashioned meters in the basement, which is incredible. In the northern part of Belgium, they have them. In Flanders, in Brussels, for long, very boring reasons, we don't have them. It's frustrating. I think within Italy, it's also varying region by region. How do we get the tools into the consumer's hands that will enable them to take advantage and reap the benefits of these AI and data developments? And how do we make this deployment consistent across regions and across the EU?
Yes, I think that it's important finding the right way to we had the smart metering in Lombardy and in Milan too, so we've already been using, but I think that artificial intelligence will enhance quite a lot a possibility to improve the quality of life of our consumer. And for us, that we define normally, we used to define ourselves as a life company, so we are very, very deep involved in enhancing the quality of life of our customers. we take a choice some years ago, deciding also to develop directly innovation. Innovation in the sense of AI or others application that we could, of course, use directly in our business. And we decided to invest heavy, and now we are, the most important corporate venture capital company in Italy. We invest more than 100 million of euros, and coming from that investments, we starting using together the company we invest, some of new applications they develop starting from a venture. For example, I wrote the name because I'm not involved in the daily operation, of course, but so that my colleague used different kind of names regarding this application. But for example, just to put some examples on the table, we use a new platform comes from AI called Pandora to do predictive maintenance of electricity network. This, of course, is a sort of integration, multiple data sources, asset characteristic, network topology, historical faults, weather condition, and load pattern to predict, of course, failure and the probability they occur. We can have a sort of advantage. We can anticipate maintenance, of course, and we can also try to manage the development of the grid, investing where we need more for primary cabins, secondary cabins, or something like that. And using this kind of innovation, we could reduce 80% the failure prediction we had before. And this is, I think, it's an important way to increase quality because, of course, our customer used to receive more often a continuous service. Second is, for example, Prometeo. Prometeo is a system for forecasting and using real-time electrical data for to predict, of course, electricity demand across different time horizon. This allowed us to optimize of course, the balancing of different sources on the grids. And we developed this kind of application with the company we support in development in our life venture activity. Just to add to other example, we, as my CEO said before, we are the first Italian producer or supplier of district heating systems. We adopt an AI-driven optimization system to maximize the use of course, thermographic monitoring to manage, of course, the supply of heating inside the system. And, of course, this has two kind of advantages. First is saving. Second is optimization of flows. I think that these are examples of AI already in use, but is also an example of the way that middle size, we have 7.8 billion market cap, so we are not a big company. We are quite big for Italy, sorry, but not so big for Europe. But it's a way to show how a company of our dimension could try to already use AI and developing next uses of AI in normal daily activity. Just the last one I could say it's, we used to do, of course, water management. And also or waste management. For example, in waste management, we use a system to have optical recognize of the waste, so we can differentiate and recycling without using, of course, human workforce, and having around 90% of precise division, separations of wastes. These allowed us to have only 10% of waste we collect all over the city, in many cities of Italy, only 10% that we used to send to WTE, increasing a lot the secondary and prime material we can recover from wasting, of course, separation. These are examples. Maybe I could go over too, but I won't be boring, so I'll stop. But this is a way to show that we are already using AI in activity, and AI is a vector of efficiency and development for consumer. We don't have doubts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of very good practical examples there that are available for consumers. Thomas, I want to go to you with a big picture question. On the whole, will data centers be more of a boon or a burden on the global energy system? In other words, all of the energy that they're going to require, is that going to be counteracted by the good that they do or not?
Thanks for asking the difficult question. So I think the short answer is it depends on what we do as policymakers and companies and citizens. It's not a foregone conclusion. Today data centers consume about 425 terawatt hours of electricity. That's about 1.5% of total global electricity consumption. We project that it's going to double by 2030, but still only make up 3% of global electricity consumption, and that it's going to be quite concentrated in certain regions around the world. So in terms of the pressure that it puts on the electricity system, it is quite a localized problem. We heard about Milan, we heard about Dublin, but of course in the US there are clusters that are creating stress also for local electricity systems. In the long term, post-2030, we don't really know which direction electricity consumption for AI is going to go. I think it depends a lot on what happens in terms of the efficiency improvements of both the software and the hardware, and on the economic trends of the uptake of AI. In our analysis, the energy savings from AI certainly outweigh the increase in energy consumption from data centers. That's quite clear. But again, nothing about achieving those energy savings is a foregone conclusion. We need to overcome a range of barriers. We mentioned digital infrastructure. This is critical. If you don't have smart sensors in factories or in homes or in EV chargers, you can't do AI. If we don't have good rules and regulations that both incentivize the use of AI for efficiency and clean technology adoption, but also allay concerns around privacy and data security, we won't use AI. And another factor that the IEA has been tracking quite closely is the availability of digital skills within the energy sector. This is a big issue. We do a survey every year of energy companies around the world looking at their hiring practices. We recently introduced a question around, are you looking for workers with digital and AI skills? The answer is quite predominantly yes. And we asked another question, are you finding challenges in finding the right people? And the answer was again, yes. And we asked a third question related to, what are the major barriers to adopting more AI-related solutions in your operations? Answer number one was the availability of skills. And second and third were related to data privacy, data security, liability, and so on. And then it's around the business case, whether that makes sense for the investments that are needed. So again, I really appreciated Roberto's intervention. We are using AI all the time around the energy sector, and it is bringing concrete benefits for sure in many, many sectors, and I don't want to minimize that in my intervention. You know, even a few % of efficiency gains in industry in Europe can make a lot of difference when margins are tight and the competitive pressure is really significant. So my intervention was not to minimize that by any means, but we also hear sort of in the discourse from time to time that AI is going to solve climate change, and I just wanted to put a little bit of, you know, realism behind that kind of statement. So in our analysis, long story short, the potential for AI to save energy certainly outweighs the near-term energy consumption, but neither are a foregone conclusion, and a lot depends on what we do as policymakers. I mean, even on the data center side, integrating data centers into electricity networks, how we do that matters as much as the total quantum of capacity that gets added, both for whether it leads to an increase in emissions, but also for whether it leads to an increase in consumer bills. It's the how, not the how much, that matters as much.
Gaspar, when it comes to the AI Continent Action Plan, how are you looking at the role that AI can play in reducing the cost of the resource-intensive infrastructure like the AI data centers themselves? In other words, we've heard about how AI can increase energy efficiency throughout the system. What about their own usage? What specifically can AI centers do for themselves to reduce their consumption?
So, as part of the AI continent, we announced the Cloud and AI Development Act. And this is a very important policy element to come. It will be part of the tech sovereignty package. And so this will bring together different elements. It will bring the sovereignty angle. And of course, energy is a critical infrastructure. So it's really important that the data related to energy is also safely stored. It will bring the sustainability dimension, so how to reduce the consumption of data centers, and we are working very closely with our colleagues from DG Energy on how to ensure that when increasing the number of data centers, we will also provide easier permitting to the ones that are using the best technology in terms of cooling, in terms of water usage. So we will connect these different elements. So this is a very important part. I think the AI continent is also looking at two other elements. The first one is the skills dimension. We were speaking about that previously. I fully agree with you. When we are asking entrepreneurs why they are not using AI more to reduce energy consumption in their business, I mean, the first answer is that they do not have the skills to do that. So we are working very much at, in the AI continent context to upskill the workforce in the European Union, especially, I mean, in energy companies, but also in SMEs, so that you have the engineers you need for using AI. Last point, I think a lot of solutions are already existing at EU level, and you gave a number of examples. We have in European Union more than 7,000 AI companies working on developing models. We have a lot of solutions already developed by companies like yours, but the issue is that consumers, end users, small companies, do not know the existence of these very good AI models and systems that are already on the market. And in a way, there is a mismatch between offer and demand. That's the reason why we also, we came up in the AI continent context with the AI on Demand platform, which is a platform where we are promoting EU-made AI models and systems that entrepreneurs can then replicate, use for their daily business. Final point on my side, I really think that we will do good AI models for the energy sector if the stakeholders that are active in the energy sector are involved in making them. So we are not going to build AI models from Brussels. We have developed what we call the Apply AI Alliance. It's there really as a follow-up to the Draghi report to look at the verticals. And we really invite all of you to be part of this Apply Alliance. We will have subsectors, especially energy, and we really invite all of you as professional specialists in the energy sector to come and inform the process. What we need to understand precisely in the AI continent context is the use cases. I mean, we were speaking previously about, data protection and prosumers. What's the real problem there? How can we use AI to solve that issue? We were speaking about predictive maintenance, grid management, how to bring that into one consistent AI pattern that would also be cybersecurity resilient. So really an invitation to all of you to join. We will need your expertise to craft the AI models of tomorrow for the energy sector.
Roberto, one last question to you before I take some questions from the audience. When we're looking at how AI can take into account regional specificities in terms of divergent energy markets, different factors on the ground, these aren't one-size-fits-all solutions, right? So, for instance, in northern Italy, what are some of the regional specificities that need to be taken into account when we're looking at how AI and data centers can benefit the energy market?
I can talk about one specific sector of our activity is waste management. Because, for example, the way you collect waste all over the north of Lombardy, okay, of Italy, is deeply influenced by the differentiation of geographical situation of the city in which you are working. Of course, habits of citizens there, because some of them have old habits in doing garbage collection, following some path, okay? And for example, if you set a goal like collecting, differentiating waste at around 70%, Milan, for example, and Brescia are one of the most differentiated waste collector all over the Europe, because they reach 70% round of the full percentage, the 100%. They differentiate 70%. But when you choose, for example, a model of waste collection, you have to consider this kind of different situation. For example, in Milan, we collect door by door. In Brescia, we collect using, of course, boxes. We reach the same goal. In the difference, the percentage differential is quite low between the two cities. But, of course, planning the activity is a different kind of pattern, because if you do making door-by-door collection, or if you have a lot of boxes all around the cities, a lot of cage all around the cities, of course, you are managing, for example, trucks differently. You need different trucks. Planning all these kind of items all together, and at the end you will have 70% of waste differentiation, is supported by AI, and is supported by AI also because you can, of course, make or get reporting from your activity, trying to solve some problems, specific problems you can have in your hands only if you have data, reporting data from your collection activity. Managing all this kind of burden of data, it's a problem that a single man, or a team of men, it take a lot of time, it take a lot of energy, it take a lot of costs too. Supporting this kind of process with AI, you will reduce time, save money, and of course being much more effective, because you solve also problem of course, is a typical problem of tail. So you can manage it in a different way and having a more efficient solution. This is an example. I could put many others, but this is a way you can use also for simple services, because collecting garbage is a simple service.
about planning the system below the collection is not so easy. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good example of how seemingly simple difference, so at-home garbage collection versus collection point garbage collection, makes a big difference in how you organize things, and that has effect on energy too, and AI systems. Let's go to some questions from the audience. The first question is for you, Jutta. Question is from Isabel Alcalde from Hydrogen Europe. Energy efficiency is one part of the puzzle. What about data centers using additional energy so that they do not further increase greenhouse gas emissions or compete with other sectors for electricity access? So is there a risk that as these data centers are using additional energy, they are disrupting the whole system by competing with other sectors for that electricity?
Yeah, actually right now we have the situation that a lot of data centers or data center operator companies claim to be climate neutral, carbon neutral, you name it, running on 100% renewable energy. And I asked someone in my office came to me and wanted to speak to me about their company, which obviously operates data centers and how they're also focused on renewable energy. And I was like, yeah, but I saw pictures of your data centers basically with a gas power plant right next to it. So how can you tell me it's 100% renewable? And then that person said, yeah, but we purchase certificates. And of course, that's not the solution. As I pointed out in my initial contribution, we have to make sure that there is an additionality here. And actually, we need so much renewable energy in order to transform away from those fossil fuels that make us more dependent on autocracies and so forth, that I don't see the problem in data center operators also wanting to purchase and finance renewable energy. I rather see the problem that if they don't do so, if they just compete for already available renewable energy today, then that might not do the trick, because at the end of the day, we need so much addition of new renewables. There is something I think data center operators could, let's say, show they really feel responsible also towards the energy transition.
Okay, interesting. Next question is for Gaspar. This question is from Hugo Ferreira Mendes Domingos from the Portuguese Sustainable Energy Association. Access to the electricity grid is a barrier to establishing new data centers. What actions by 2030 will be there to enhance access to electricity transmission grid?
So, not being a specialist of, the connection to the grid, rather a question for our colleagues in DG Energy, but what will be part of the Cloud and AI Development Act is the acceleration of the permitting system. And in the context of the acceleration of the permitting system, what we envisage is in-depth discussion with the local authorities, with the member states, on pre-selecting site, including through, let's say, the connection to the grid. And I think this discussion, this upstream discussion, is absolutely essential if we want to make sure that we have the right path for the acceleration in the number of data centers. So this discussion with the member states, with the grid operator, will be absolutely essential from that point of view.
Okay, great. Next question is for Thomas. The question is from Ellie Tessier from Bologna. In your modeling, do you differentiate the different kinds of AI, in particular between Gen AI and the models we focused on during this panel?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. The AI is not a homogeneous good. There's generative AI models which are large and energy hungry. There's generative AI models which are smaller and much more energy efficient. There's text models which use relatively little energy. There's video generation models which use a huge amount of energy. There's agentic AI, which is now writing code for people across half an hour, 2-hour workloads, which consume a huge amount of energy. And there we're just sticking with generative AI, right? Then there's traditional AI models like machine learning, which don't consume very much energy at all. So we talk about AI, but it's just a useful abstraction. This is a very complex sector with many, many different products. And I think the sort of subtext behind the question is that generative AI is energy intensive, and the kind of useful AI that we use in the real economy tends to be much smaller and much less energy intensive models. And I think this is broadly true, right? At the same time, I would be a little bit cautious about drawing an implication from that, namely that we should promote the second and forget about the first, right? Because I think there are significant innovation spillovers from generative AI to real-world applications of AI that can help us to save energy and promote sustainability, right? So let me give you an example. Video generation models are extremely energy intensive, but they are now starting to have real-world implications in terms of object recognition, in terms of applications of AI to robotics, and so on. So we're seeing an innovation spillover from generative AI used in video generation in Instagram and TikTok to maybe real-world applications that can have benefits in terms of energy savings or industrial competitiveness and so on. So I think the subtext behind the question is broadly true, that generative AI is much more energy intensive than the models that are typically used in real-world physical applications across the economy, but we should be careful about drawing implications from that.
Great. And one last question to Roberto. Question is from Rahan. What is needed in terms of what data centers can provide to mitigate cross-border fragmentation within the EU and to really achieve an EU energy union? How can data centers help in achieving that?
It depends according to my opinion, of course, it depends from the destination of data centers. I think that we, at the European level, we have thinking a lot about having some main data center, especially for defense and security, all together. Because I think that these topics can be managed at single country level. And I think that managing them at EU level, we could, of course, increase also the view that we have to supply with energy coming from different countries, that kind of data centers. I know that, and I could understand that when we're talking about establishing one data center in EU, we establish it in one EU country. But I don't think that a single country could support or has to support the energy consumer of this kind of data center at all. And I think that this is a way also to focus much more, if we need it much more, because I think that's the problems we already had on the table, about the fact that we can keep a separate energy market. Most of the problems comes on ETS debate, comes from the fact that we have, again, different energy market domestically. And we, for example, we don't have, and one of the problem also on the stabilization of grid comes from that, because if you don't have interconnection, in some cases, you have problem inside your country because you can send, of course, energy outside of it. I think that we have to think on strongly, because I think that it's a good way to solve the problems that many countries facing. Italy is an example at the moment, and could solve the energy cost problem.
Well, certainly, there's a very interesting idea about having the defense and security AI all in one place. And like I was saying on the previous panel, that could be a whole other event when we're talking about the security of data centers. Here we've been talking about the energy of data centers, both in terms of their energy use and what data centers can contribute to the energy system. So I want to thank the panelists for some really interesting insights there. I think it's full of some pretty exciting news. I think particularly some of the concrete examples we've heard could really transform the way we do things. But as Thomas cautions, it's not automatically going to happen. We don't know for sure that that's where we're going to go. There's a lot left to see as we move forward. So how about a round of applause for our excellent panelists. Thank you to you gentlemen in the room and to you joining us online. And now for those of you here in the room, in the audience, I'd like to welcome you to keep the conversation going over the networking lunch in the next room. If you're watching online, I wish you an excellent rest of your day. Take care.